So, I saw In a Violent Nature.
Before you start, where and how? Was it Shutter? Did you get Shutter?
Um,
Oh,
I
never mind. I
downloaded
know how
it.
you got it.
I
Yep, I know.
downloaded it illegally and watched it via Plex on my television.
Okay, well, probably should. I did. I
So,
committed a crime to watch this film. Okay,
yes.
well, I'm glad you're recording that audio.
No, I was joking about what I said. That wasn't
Yeah,
that wasn't
no,
true.
I
That
you
was a joke.
definitely got it legit. No, I know you did. Now I understand where you got it from. Okay,
So, um, I gave it a 3 out of 5. We'll just cut to the chase there. Gave it a 3 out of 5.
okay, okay. I think that's pretty
Um,
good
I
for
thought
you.
Okay, so I want to talk about. I'm going to make some notes here, some talking points here. I need to talk about. I mean, we'll get there, I'm sure, but we'll talk about that. The yoga kill, I'll call it.
The
Talk
log
about
splitter,
the what?
the log splitting sequence.
Yeah, yeah. We'll
Oh
talk
my
about every kill. We'll talk about everyone.
because to be honest, it's mainly those two. The rest are just like what I call like good. No, honestly, all of them have a moment. Anyway, okay. As long as you,
Okay,
I'm
so let's
excited.
talk about. This is a full spoiler review
Yes.
since we've both seen it. Um, Gave it a 3 out of 5. I thought it was the opening was so fucking cool. Really
Hmm.
loved that it like took its time and you're just following this killer kind of trudging through the grass. You don't know where he's going to go, what he's going to do. He even ends up in the dude's house and you're still like the first guy's house and you're still not even sure what he's going to do with this guy. Um and of course then he, it's like they set the premise with him touching the little locket and getting this vision in the mirror of like the medallion that his dad gave him. So immediately you understand, like, okay, so he's looking for this thing, which was the stopwatch or whatever it was that was taken in the beginning of the film by those guys. He's trying to get that thing back, some kind of magical thing that keeps him buried and suspended underground, which is just like a cool conceit to have. It's like, yeah, no, this is just how it is. You put this magic little. It was a locket, right? Is that what you would call it?
Yes,
It
it
was
was a
a
locket.
Okay, this magic locket keeps this fucking monster buried underground, and they took the locket, so the monster gets raised from the dead, and he's like out looking for it. First house he finds, he sees a locket that's similar, but it isn't the exact locket, so he like lets it be. The guy whose house he's in starts shooting at him. He chases the guy outside. Not chase, of course. He's just walking a lot like Jason. He's basically
Yeah.
Jason. Um, so the
I will. Yeah, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was gonna just call out for one that to, to just some scenes parts I liked about it was the dude's hat. Was it number one motherfucker or something?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did.
I just think that's really goddamn funny.
Yeah,
And
no,
then
that's good.
two, I loved how much this movie is smart because there was foreshadowing about what stops him in the woods too. I don't know if you remember or paid attention to when the sheriff kind of comes to like give the old man shit
Yeah,
and
it's
to
the
like,
bear traps, or
yeah,
the
he's like,
not bear
you know,
traps, but animal traps.
I do like that they like even point those out to the audience without like, I don't know, hearing that you didn't necessarily like if you weren't expecting it, that could have been shocking. So that was just something else
I as
I
soon as
liked there.
they mention the traps, so instantly I'm like, okay, somebody's gonna get caught by one of these things. Why else would
True.
this be in the thing? And then as soon as they saw the guy himself running into the woods away from the monster, I was like, okay, he's gonna get caught by his own trap, guaranteed. So he goes out there. I think part of the problem was the first like 15 minutes sort of set me up to think the movie was a little different than it ended up being. The
Mhm.
reason for that is because the first kill, right, the kill he makes on this older guy, the number one motherfucker, as we can call him, they didn't show it. But
Yeah.
oh my god, okay. So they show him reaching for the guy's face, he's screaming, and then it cuts to that exact hand reaching for the medallion in the house that you saw earlier. This is kind of going to
Yeah.
be disjointed
And
and
it's
not really
completely
understandable.
bloody.
But yeah, and his hand is suddenly covered in blood. I thought that was the coolest fucking thing. Then also, as he starts leaving the house going back into the woods, I'm like, oh, they're probably gonna like give us a hint at the kill, not fully show it, and that's exactly what they do. He's just walking by the car, and you see in the
Oh,
peripheral, right,
okay.
the man is dead on the ground, like his face has basically been caved in, his arm has been ripped off, and it's sitting on top of like the little old rusty car that he was killed against. So immediately I'm thinking like, okay, this thing is this like this brutal, vicious monster, but it's not going to be a typical slasher film in that they're going to show crazy dismemberments because they've already cut out the first kill, and the way it was filmed was so creative. I was like, man, okay, they're going to have really cool kind of stuff happening in this movie, aren't they? And spoiler alert, I was very disappointed because it wasn't very cool. The rest of the kills were like
What? Okay,
very
first,
slasher-esque, on the
no.
nose,
Look,
like
look. I'm gonna.
no,
I'm
no,
gonna.
no, stop. I know why you're going to interrupt me because you're going to talk about the stupid fucking yoga kill that's
No,
so
no, no.
ridiculous and
This is
the
about
log splitting.
the philosophy of what you're saying. Like, I just want to point out that, or like, what I'd like to say is that you're super ignorant, and that's okay. But like in the way of like how you even talk about the way the kills are done, the rest of them are like, oh, what you would expect from a movie like a slasher.
Yeah.
And I think maybe there is some inherent benefit from seeing a lot of horror movies that none of the kills were done in a way that I have ever seen between, and we'll get into the details with them, but that girl in the lake, the way that he just like takes her down, it's completely silent except when she jumps up for air to like, and it gets yanked, like nothing like that.
Yeah.
The yoga thing in particular, it's obvious why I think that's a little bit done. And then you think about the log splitting kill and how different that is. I just,
Yeah, we'll get to those. I will
I,
concede to some of these things, I'm sure, but
okay.
what I'm trying to set up is like my expectations for the film and what I was thinking while watching it.
Now that you bring that up, that is such an interesting thing because the other reason I brought up the you being an ignorant slasher guy is that it's very often that the first kill is kind of like teased, or like they're about to kill him and that's the cut to the title card and the
You know,
intro credits.
you're right. I'm pretty sure that's how. Because truthfully, I am a slasher like
Oh,
noob.
for sure.
I don't
Like,
know. I don't watch slashers. I don't really like them that much. They've just never interested me. So I've only seen like the original Scream. I've seen the Scream, I think 4 or 5, the remake in like 2021
okay, so
was
there
the
was
one
a
with
remake.
Jenna Ortega
Oh,
and
that so
whoever
that
else.
was, yeah, that was five technically.
Okay, 5. So I've seen that one. That's like if I'm actually thinking about it, those are the only slasher movies I've really seen.
Yeah, and so there is some kind of like this idea of what in your head what they're like, and I think that this movie is almost for the genre, like the slasher heads out there, like kind of to play off expectations that you are used to seeing. So like having it cut, but then like continue on the way it did, like that. I agree that it is something that was like really well done, but almost is an homage or like very
Yeah, it
typical
is.
of slashers. So
No, it
that's
makes
just,
sense. And
yeah.
my point
But
was, as you said that, I remembered the first Scream is kind of the same way with the girl answering the phone, and then like her being killed is. You don't actually, if I remember right, you don't see her being killed. You just see her like hanging from a tree outside with her like gut cut open, right?
so what
Or
happens
like,
is like she gets caught, like she's running like up her front lawn as her parents are pulling up. Ghostface covers her mouth and stabs her in the stomach to like show that he caught up to her, and then it cuts to the parents' point of view, and then they find her hung up
yeah,
in that tree.
right. So it is very
Hmm.
similar to, yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
you don't really see it, and that's how the first kill was in this one. So
The way I always envision is like when they're making it, it's like we don't want to have our like 8 out of 10 moment happen too early to kind of like you kind of like build up to get that like kind of salivate for those people who really want it, or the tension for the people who kind of like dread it. So that makes sense in my mind of why that's like a trope in slashers.
yes. So my ignorance made me really like kind of forget because obviously
Hmm.
like I watched so many movies. I love movies. Like I know the tropes even
Yeah.
if I haven't seen them. So like I said, you saying that reminded me. Oh yeah, I guess that is
Stuff.
kind of like
Hmm.
the formula. So this movie. But when I was watching it, I didn't think about that. So what this
Sure.
movie is sort of like it's a slasher movie that's fitting within the genre, but also wants to LOL, subvert your expectations, right? That stupid phrase, but truly that's kind of what it wanted to do. So I'm realizing now, like, in hindsight, that's what it was. It was obviously just a slasher movie at heart with a bit of creative kills in it and an interesting premise, which I guess we didn't even discuss, which is that the whole movie follows around the slasher, the monster. You see it from the whole movie from the monster's POV. So that really is just the gimmick. It's a slasher movie, and the gimmick is you watch the monster walk around and kill people. And so that is what sort of made me think this movie might be something that it didn't end up being.
Mm-hmm.
So we're watching this killer walk around. You see the first kill in the periphery, and it's like brutal and violent, but you don't fully see it. And he eventually makes it to the campfire right at night where all these teens are talking, and immediately you know, like, okay, all of these dudes and girls are the ones that are going to be fucking killed brutally throughout the whole movie, guaranteed, and one of them will survive, I'm sure. So, but like, I loved the panning camera and seeing the monster in the background, but like, because he's standing so still, you almost don't see him, but because you know he's there, because we've been watching from his perspective, you like see him. But the teenagers absolutely don't see him. Or I don't know what they are, college kids, whatever.
Yeah, they're at best 22 or something.
However, immediately I'm like, oh, this dialogue fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's definitely not. And there's very little of it, thankfully.
True, there is little dialogue, but this whole like campfire sequence where it's kind of 360 panning around these guys, it's about 10 minutes, and it's them telling essentially the origin story. Ooh, you guys want to hear a spooky story? There was apparently like a crazy, this fireman's slow in the brain son died and came back from the grave and murdered all these people. They're essentially just setting the tone, giving you the lore of what this monster is. And it took about 10 minutes, and the story was actually like pretty compelling. It was just, the 360 circle shot and the guy telling the story, and I was like visualizing it and totally into it. But all the dialogue leading up to the actual story was just really bad. I wish I could remember specifically what was said, but the one guy telling the story, did he have he has no Wikipedia page, so I couldn't even look him up.
I was going to tell you.
Does he have an accent?
Yeah, it's for two things. One, this is Canadian, so they're all Canadian, and that's what the accent was.
Yeah, but he sounded Australian.
Oh, and what I was going to say, these are all, like, no-named actors. Like, I think one might be a friend of the director, but the idea is, like, none of these people were, like, actors. They're supposed to be no-name people, and I think it shows. Which, sometimes, like, you get these no-name actors, and they really blow you away. This one was kind of like...
I honestly don't think it was their fault. Number one, like I'm saying, this guy with the accent, I just don't know what was going on, but he pronounced words very strangely, and I didn't know if he was trying to cover an accent or he just had a kind of idiosyncratic accent.
Yeah, I remember in my brain it was like, oh, I definitely know that these people are not American, is all I remember specifically.
They're like Canadian, but they're the, our friend Eric American Canadian, where they basically sound like us, but they, go sorry instead of sorry.
Yeah, it's like
that's the kind of Canadians they are.
Yeah, they're closer to the Minnesota side of Canada instead of the New York side.
So, anyways, this guy's accent was distracting. I don't know if he was just pronouncing words weird or what, but it was distracting to listen to him talk. And two, I'm not going to blame the actors for their performance because the dialogue they were given was fucking horseshit. It was so bad. It was, and that's what also like immediately knocked me down a peg of my excitement because, like I said, the first 15 or 20 minutes is just kind of silently following around this monster. The argument that the park ranger had with the old man in the beginning was like fairly believable. It sounded fine. I was like, okay, yeah, they're just kind of yelling at each other. They're sick of each other. Sounds totally fine. But then these kids start talking and they're trying to make jokes and stuff, and I was just kind of rolling my eyes. And maybe that's the point because now I wanted him to die. So.
There's a way to, it's like this idea of like, you want to like them enough to like want them to get out, but not enough to like, you don't want to hate them to the point where like,
hold on.
Yeah.
Maybe I just talked myself into realizing this dialogue is brilliant because
there you go. All right, bring it on.
Listen, the only one who survives is the girl who like said the least and was the most normal.
Yeah.
Everyone else was fucking obnoxious. They were telling jokes that weren't funny. They were talking in a way that like just wasn't real. It was very
They were a character, and like they
yeah.
were an archetype more than a actual human being, for sure.
And then the tough girl in the end who makes it out was obviously like probably just the best actress that they auditioned because she was
Yeah.
able to actually like carry the ending
Emote.
kind of sequence. So yeah, maybe the absolute cringe-inducing dialogue was intentional, so
Yeah,
that when they
because
die, you're laughing about it. But I don't know. That's
I,
just that
I,
might
I,
be me going out on a limb.
no, what
I
what I will say is that is an intentional thing. As and like I only bring it up because I watch a lot of horror movies, and I've seen it done poorly, where it's people that you're like the popcorn, like yeah, I can't wait for these assholes to get theirs. Like that's a fun like way to write a bunch of people so that when their dialogue is dumb or stupid, you know that the creator is writing them that way on purpose. It's not because they can't think of a compelling reason. Um, and then sometimes they write characters that you don't want to die, so you're really empathizing with their struggle the whole time. But I think it's really easy to write vapid, boring characters that you look forward to their comeuppance rather than like interesting characters that like you want them to see the other end of this journey. A lot of the times you're like, they're who really cares? You're just the point of view I'm watching this carnival ride from. And I think that this movie probably could have done a better job of setting up these like they exist specifically to annoy the our antagonist, the monster in the woods, and to like put themselves in scenarios that'll get them killed in fun ways. Like like the girl who's only there to want to fuck another girl, like that's her entire thing. Anytime she talks, it's like that's all that matters. So yeah, I think a lot of horror movies do it poorly, but it can be intentional in a fun way of like, these dumb meat sacks are gonna go, but I at least have fun watching them instead of being mad at them because they're so annoying.
okay. Well, I also just remember dialogue that makes me almost retract what I just said as well. So basically, I think in the end, I'm just giving maybe a little bit more credit than where it's due. I do think it was just kind of like bad writing. I'm pretty sure this was the guy's directorial debut as well, so I'm
Yes.
not expecting it to be kind of perfect. Although there's been some like insane directorial debuts from a lot of
I what
people.
I think
So
what that speaks to is that the parts that are good enough that you can think that even the parts that aren't don't seem to hit with you, you'd be like, they seem to be good at what like there's a good product in there, so maybe it wasn't just like bad by default. Like you kind of give them the benefit of the doubt instead of this. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I am sometimes. I'm able to convince myself of parts that normally would bother me in movies, but maybe in certain ones don't. It's because the rest of the movie was good that I just kind of think like, piece didn't come together, but maybe it was because of X, Y, or Z. I kind of tend to just come up with excuses.
I think this guy massively could have benefited. I just looked it up. He solo wrote it. He could have benefited from a
Yeah.
co-writer.
Yes,
Just
I
one
did
other
know that he was.
person.
It's one of those things that like you definitely know that when he wanted to write this, it's about the monstery stuff, and like that felt very much like a entry level version of that scene. There's a version of that scene that's way more compelling than we got, but like that's the writer's 101 version of it, I guess is the
Yeah.
meanest thing I can say about it.
Yeah, it almost felt like early draft placeholdery
Yeah,
dialogue.
yeah, that's a better
Um,
way of putting it.
so continuing on, the first kill is the annoying guy who was telling the lore with the weird accent that I didn't understand. He ends up, getting his like head chopped in half, which was like it was fun to watch that.
Mm-hmm.
Something that before I forget, I'm just going to bring it up. Something that I had a hard time reconciling was how grounded. So this is actually I'm reminding myself of like a greater issue I had with the movie. Following the killer's perspective is a bit confusing because number one, like his existence is already like in make believe land and you need to suspend your disbelief, right? He's a monster that's been resurrected. But at the same time, it's shot very realistically, and the fact that we're following the killer and watching him walk from point A to point B, like that grounds the movie so much that it was then hard to suspend my disbelief for other things, if this makes sense.
Yeah, but What are you referencing that was hard to suspend? You're just belief
So,
for.
um, the yoga kill, first of all, is what I'll call it. And just sort of in general for the movie, like, hold on, let me collect my thoughts a little bit because you know, of course, as I'm like thinking and talking through all this, I'm remembering things and jumping back and forth. But I think this harkens back to my original point as well, where I thought this movie was going to be something different because it was so. I was willing to suspend my disbelief and concede that, like, yeah, he's a monster that's like coming back to life. That's totally fine. But watching him walk around just grounded it so much that I didn't want it to get so silly, and it ended up becoming silly.
I understand that perspective, and what I'll say as like a way I viewed it is that I there was a this interpretation, and I guess we'll probably touch on this towards the end too, that he isn't a monster as much as a force of nature, that he's not necessarily grounded in the human realm, but of just nature pushing back and the intensity and fury of like that it being kind of more of this natural force instead of a monster.
Of course, but to me, that's almost an argument
So,
for me, like, is that it's more grounded that way. That if you do
right,
look at
but
him as old, like you can suspend your disbelief enough that he's a monster, but he's also of this force of nature. So to me, that says like the movie should have been even more realistic.
what I'm saying though is like, have you seen the victim of a bear mauling? Like a true, like just went to town, attacked it, ripped the person to shreds. Like what a bear is capable of doing.
Right. Yeah.
What if that
It's
was funneled and channeled into a humanoid form with focus and maybe personal stakes? What would that type of raw, like survive, just going by instinct, be able to do? That's kind of my counterpoint of like, it's kind of like what a larger animal is able to do what if they could use tools? What if they had fun? Or like there was a personal vendetta involved. You know, I need my thing back and you guys are desecrating where I live. Like so that's where I get some of the like, I can, I will concede the point that like I can only say that, and if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. But that's how I see it as to why it still feels authentic to that original
well,
kind of grounded
that's
vibe.
that's also why I didn't like the ending monologue because it was, man, I hope these Discord notifications don't come through on the recording. That's also why I really hated the monologue at the end because I thought it was like insanely ham-fisted and redundant, and it was just like a waste of time to me. It was
Now I will tell
basically
you, I called it, didn't I? I said that I bet you I was like the ending is very controversial, and I felt like don't now you totally see what I mean. I didn't like the ending either, to be clear. I don't think it added
okay.
anything. What I did love was seeing the post-traumatic stress that girl would have to live with forever in like being able to
Oh, of
show like
course.
and like you were her that whole time. You're like, where is he? But obviously it makes no sense. He walks slowly. He isn't going to be there, but it
Yeah,
doesn't
they
stop
just
you from
drove. Yeah.
looking. And so like I think if they cut out that woman's like all of her story dialogue and it was just the like I need you to calm down and like how you instantly didn't trust her, at least that's how I felt. Of like I just don't trust anyone who's here to help now. And like that was like an interesting reaction to this traumatic event that ruined this person's life forever, even though she survived. Um,
Yeah, I think that's, and not trusting her, I think that's more an indication of um, bad writing, I think, or maybe even bad acting. I think her delivery was just a little bit inauthentic, which is what made you not trust her. And judging by the acting of all the other people, I'm not going to give the director the benefit of the doubt and say, like, oh, he wanted it to be like that, because I think it's just maybe he didn't have the time, the budget, he didn't write it well enough. It's just like, you know, everyone was so phony and weird that none of it felt real. So,
Interesting. I definitely did not like. The reason I was starting to worry because when she was talking about her brother having this weird brain attack from this bear of like, oh, are they trying to imply that she like her brother was this thing? But I think that was just planting an idea, and I am being distrustful of a new person coming in to save the day. So like, I don't think it was a writing issue that made me distrust her personally. I can tell you it was from the. So I guess when I say that out loud, I'm literally pointing to a point of her monologue that made me think that. So maybe I just proved your point on accident, but and I didn't even
Right.
realize it.
Well,
So well, whatever.
well, that's why it's fun to discuss. So
We stepped over the actual yoga kill. So for
yeah.
one, what I absolutely so this was for all the freaks out there that are just like you think you know what's going to happen. So like this feels like for the gore heads out there, like for me, like I genuinely like jaw dropped and was like scooting back up into my theater seat when I was seeing it because I was just like, there's no way this is what's actually happening. Like I don't understand. Like I think I know where it's going. There's no way they're going to show all of that. Like and so to me it was like the little kid in me giggling, and I guess that may have taken you out of it, but like that was kind of when the movie really escalated. Though I will point out, I think the kill right before this, him getting across the water to this or maybe that was after the yoga kill. Is that after?
No, it's before because he walks through the water, drowns
I
the girl,
just
walks up onto the land.
there was just like I loved the silences as when he's first walking across and you just see him go down and it just holds on there for a long time and you're like, okay, at this
So,
speed,
okay.
eventually, I love that.
Yes, I love that too. And that's another reason that the over the top silliness of some of these kills bothered me because, like, I don't know. I loved the simplicity of that kill where he just drowns the girl. You see him walk under the water from across the shore and no bubbles of air come up, right? Which I love because,
Hmm.
like, he's fucking
Yeah, he's
dead.
not breathing.
And he just walks across the fucking base of the lake, pulls this girl under. There's no sound, no splashing, like not like a shark. This is like, intentional. The girl pops up for air for 1 second and lets out a tiniest little yelp and then just gets pulled back down. And then, 30 seconds, 45 seconds go by and then her limp body just rises to the surface and he walks out of the water. Like, that is so fucking cool and badass. And then the flip side to that is he goes and kills this girl's, wannabe girlfriend in the most over the top ridiculous way, which is
Yeah.
I couldn't. So what I'm getting to from all the things I've said is that I couldn't suspend my disbelief for this kill, and I don't. And at the time I didn't really know why, but now as I'm talking through it, I'm able to articulate why. It's because the movie was so grounded, following the killer, just watching him walk around. The lake drowning kill was so simple and clean. The first kill he makes on the old man, you don't even see it. So like all these things leading up to this kill to me is telling me this movie is going to be like to the point. Like this is going to be, like you said, a force of nature. He comes in, he kills, and just leaves things for dead. And then suddenly we get to this yoga kill, and it's just like the most ridiculous thing. So first of all, he has these two hooks that are connected via a chain. I think they're called drag hooks or something. The firemen use them. I don't know. I don't know what they're for. But it's like, a 6 or 10 foot chain between two hooks. First of all, this girl is standing there with her back to the killer. The killer walks up to her, punches this hook through her entire gut, like through the back, out the front of her. But it's a curved hook, like pointing down. So he basically stabbed through the curved side of this hook through her entire body. And like she didn't get knocked forward by this. She was able to she had the core strength to just stand there and hold it while he stabbed through her. Like it didn't make any sense. There's no stabbing capability to this curved thing. Then he like goes up through her body, hooks the hook to the top of her head, stabs through, then he like pulls the chain back down through the hole in her own body that he's created to like, yank her head through the of course I'm like smiling and laughing because it is so ridiculous. But I didn't like it out of context. That kill is fucking awesome, but within the context of the movie and what I was expecting, I didn't like it.
And
so
okay, continue.
Let me finish. So he punches this hook through her gut, reaches up, hooks the hook through this girl's head, then lets go and pulls on the chain that like is yanking now her head down through the hole in her own body. He also props his fucking foot up onto her back to like get more leverage and pull the chain through to really make her twist it up. But
I
all the
forgot how
time I
good
was
this
thinking
is.
like this girl's dead. Her legs would give out immediately and she'd be a lump on the ground. He wouldn't be able to push against her with his own leg to like pull her through. She's already dead. Second of all, yeah, like the curved hook wouldn't be able to stab through her, and if he is strong enough to just brute force it, like this girl is 100 pounds, like she would have just been pushed out of the way. I don't know, just like all
Okay,
these
I'm
little
gonna
things
stop
added
you.
up.
Would that make the movie better if she realistically couldn't be cinematically killed?
No, of
Would that
course not. But you don't kill her that way. You kill her a different way.
okay? I
What
suppose
if what
that's
if what if he just walks up to her, grabs the top of her head, and pops her head like a fucking like he's crushing an apple and rips her head off with the spine attached, like Mortal Kombat fatality style. Like, what if he just did that? It took 5 seconds. She barely even registers what's happening, and it's like an insane kill that you can suspend your disbelief enough for.
I
But
guess
instead, I don't know.
so. I think the big difference is that the director is a fan of these in-depth practical kills, and also but in a ground like and also wanted to make a grounded movie. And I I can't defend what you're saying as your like why you didn't like it. Like who could argue against what you're saying? Like I don't agree that it is against the tone of the movie. I guess it's like it all boils down to because like I don't even want to like disagree with you. I'm not trying to even do that, but as much as like why I loved it, it's like for all the reasons that you're declaring about like how absurd and over the top this is why it worked. And like it's very weird, but horror can kind of cheat sometimes of like I think about every other sequence in this movie, and that is the only one that feels as alien. Because even what I'd
Yes.
say is like the second most violent kill is the log splitting one, which I love so much because it feels so human and like this
Okay.
is a
So
man doing it.
yeah. Okay.
But
So
hold on, I want to finish my thought on the yoga thing. But I was the more you say it, the less I can defend it in the movie it's in. Because you're right, like there is a way to be that level of like jaw dropping that's still grounded in that sense. Um and like maybe the like in some ways I kind of wanted that was like the first sign of the anger that the character was capable of. Like that to me felt like so just like cruel and mean spirited, right? Like it was fun, but like that is a way to desecrate the human
yeah.
form.
No, I
And
thought about
like
that too. Yeah.
so that to me feels like them trying to show this level of like brutality of like this thing is capable of so much more. So like, but there is probably a better way to do it. The way you point out like, because at first I was like,
So
yeah, you do have a lot of complaints about it, but like, would it being realistic make it better? It's like, well, you just do a different type of
yeah,
thing, but that
exactly.
expresses the same emotional, like,
So
yeah.
something else, another thing like dialogue, just another example of why I didn't like it was before these two girls get killed, right? There's the yoga girl and then there's the girl who gets drowned. They're like on this dock and you're, watching them from the perspective of the killer who's across the lake, like hiding in the trees. And you hear them talking and like the yoga girl specifically says, they're kind of flirting and like they're both
Hmm.
into each other, but they're not like openly saying it yet. You can kind of tell. But the yoga girl bends over and specifically says, like, sorry, the bend over thing is because I'm seeing the scene in my head, but it's out of
Yeah.
context. One girl's swimming and one girl's still standing on the dock. So she's bending over to talk to the girl swimming. And she specifically says, like, I'm not into this high school bullshit. But then immediately is like, but by the way, we're about to play a little game that's completely high school. She's like, I'm going to go stretch. And when you're done swimming, maybe you can come find me and help me stretch some more. It's like, aren't you the fucking lady who just said she wasn't into high school bullshit? And then you're going to make her play this like cat and mouse game? Like that shit just kind of drives me crazy. And I don't know why I could just, like, I don't know. It just pissed me off watching this. I'm like, God, this is so annoying.
So it's
And it's not
interesting
because
that. Oh,
it's
go
not
ahead.
annoying in a way where I'm like, yay, I want her to die. It was annoying in a way that I'm like, that's just bad writing. She's within a sentence flip flopping what her intentions are, basically. It was just
So
annoying.
I have been struggling with a lot of that too. Of like, people are really annoying and flip flop all the time and not realize they're doing it. And like, was that intentional? Was that supposed to point her? Be like, she's just like, as a character, like she's just really stupid and doesn't realize she's doing literally the same thing. Or,
Nah.
but I believe that that is also can be interpreted as the writing a character intentionally to make you bothered, but it in for example done too poorly, where it's like, and it's not, oh my god, you're so annoying, I can't wait till you get yours, like, oh my god, get off the screen, please leave the film type of anger, which I think is
Yeah.
a failure of, like you said, of the writing of it. Just it's just too intense, and like there's a better way to have that exact same idea of, like, in my brain, like I think of her, she's just like an idiot and like just like a girl who's self-absorbed and think like I don't do drama, but it's like on Facebook they're in an open relationship. It's like, okay,
Right. Yeah, no, that's
and like, so you can interpret it as that and that being fitting, but then at the same time you can also see it as you making me hate this person too much. And I just think that's an
I
interesting way to how we have come to opposite conclusions, but I totally agree with your take about her being. I was glad when she died. I was like, man,
of course.
and
Yeah, it was
and
fun.
like, and almost maybe like, this is just plain devil's advocate. Like, they gave the most cruel and mean death to the most obnoxious and
Right,
stupid
sure.
character. I don't know.
No,
Just
that did
it's
not
funny.
go over my head. That did, yeah.
Uh-huh. Oh, I'm sure
But
that wasn't surprising.
um, I don't know. Like I said, there's just too many other examples of the
Hmm.
writing being poor that I can't give him any credit. Maybe his intent was for some of that of what you're saying, but it just wasn't executed well enough for me to give it a pass.
No,
So
I
it
totally I hear
you
you.
know
I
registered.
I'll allow
And
you.
remember, I gave this a 3 out of 5. Right? It's like a still solid score. I liked enough of it that
The
it
war.
was cool. But these are the little things that like make it not able to be like a classic where it could have been.
So I think it's weird about discussing things that you don't want to just gush endlessly about. Is it's way easier to explain why you didn't like something than to talk about why it is, like, it's easier to explain why it didn't get a 5 versus why it's a 3 instead of a 4. Like, so it can feel like you dogpile on a thing when really it's just, it can be kind of easier to point out what you don't
Of
like, and
course.
it's, so that
Yeah,
can be.
that's human nature. I will say, I've been gushing about the first 15 or 20 minutes of this film. I was like completely mesmerized and totally
Mhm.
into it. And then it was up until this yoga kill, which actually it might have been like 30 minutes into the movie, this yoga kill, or maybe 20. I don't know. But it was kind of a
Those,
long time.
those.
And then this is where I went like, okay, I see. Like this kill is absurd, but also
Mhm.
like it kind of took me out of the movie a little bit. So
So then,
then what?
I was just gonna say. So then next, I was like, oh, I
Okay,
was gonna
yeah.
ask you about specifically the sequence with, because I think then that's when they start to piece up that, like, oh shit, there's a monster coming after us. We need to get out of
Yes.
here.
So,
Oh, I forgot about the part at the, like, the house with the two guys and the gun and like the him playing with the toy car.
yes, yes. So yeah, he makes it back to the cabin to there's like 8 people in this group, by the way. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of people for him to kill. Yeah, he makes it back to the log cabin they're staying at. He like puts a stick into the car and like jams it onto the horn. So one of the guys has to come out and be like, what the hell, why is the horn going off? But see, man, this is the rubber banding stuff that like just
I
bothered
know,
me. I
right?
couldn't reconcile it in my head. This is the stuff I'm talking about because then immediately after this like cartoonish clown kill, the killer does something that it's subtle but it's like so brilliant in that the axe that he wants to kill these people with is like in a place at the front of the cabin that if he just walks up and grabs it, the people inside will see him. So he creates this distraction to walk around the opposite side of the house so that he can swing around to the front and grab the axe without just directly approaching the house and being seen. You see, like, that to me is so grounded and it makes the killer, like, he has very specific intent and strategy, and that's so fucking cool. and then it's ruined by these like over the top clownish kills with terrible fucking dialogue that
Ruined,
was so
over the top.
unbelievable. You know what I'm saying?
I would say that you're using pretty intense language with over like ruin. Like I would disagree that anything is like. I understand where you're coming from. I don't agree that it's as egregious as you feel it is. I think that
Well,
if the dialogue is functional. I don't think that it's bad. Like I believe in the whole 10-point scale and it feels like a 5. It is functional. It is not very exciting or interesting, but it is not like upsetting to me.
well, that's the stuff that's turning this movie into a 3 out of 5 instead of a 5 out of 5 because it's like I'm describing to you why he did what he just did. That's like 10 out of 10 shit right there. But you have this 4 out of 5 dialogue that to me it ruins, you combine a 10 out of 10 with a 4 out of 10, you're going to ruin the 10 out of 10. That's just like how it
Oh,
is.
sure. I'm just surprised you're talking about the things you don't like with such intensity. I'm more
Well, I'm an
like
intense guy. That's just
yeah,
how it
and I
goes.
think that that can be kind of a probably why a lot of people think I'm more mean or more angry than I am because I probably sound just as like
Yeah,
intensely about
we speak
stupid.
intensely and passionately and we use strong words.
That's dumb. We should be fucking less stupid.
Right. So,
Um, so what I was going to say after that, because like I truly believe that there's only one point that you've described in the movie that really took you out, and it's so far been you don't like the dialogue and that you thought one kill was over the top. So far, I think
yes.
that you've said a lot more positive, significantly more than negative.
Yes. No, you're
And
right.
I
Yeah.
loved the sequence with. I don't know how I feel about them showing Johnny's face. Like I don't think that it looked bad. It was just like I kind of like that you just never saw it. You know, that's
That
just
was interesting. Yeah, he definitely looked disturbing. Of course, he looked like a
yeah.
giant dead guy. And his like white kind of eyes, they were sort of milky like
Zombie-ish.
a
That's the vibe I got. I was like a zombie, like having the
yeah.
color in your eyes drained and stuff.
Yeah, so I think he looked sufficiently disturbing, but I do agree it would have been better if they just never showed his face.
Yeah.
So yeah, so anyways, he does this distraction tactic to walk around the house to get to the front without like being seen directly, and you even see a shot of so one guy leaves the cabin to stop the horn from honking, the other guy stays in the cabin, and you can see the other guy in the cabin like wide-eyed staring at this monster as he walks up to the front porch and picks the axe up that he wants to kill them with. So like you even get a little dual shot there of like the one guy walking out there and be like, what the fuck, man? Shit talking out there,
Yeah.
pulling the stick out of the car, and the other dude inside scared shitless, staring at this monster through the window. Um, so there's a lot of cool stuff, but yeah, I guess really the dialogue was just so dumb to me that it really distracted me. So, anyways, he kills these two fucking guys, of course, and
I
they're more
will
run of the
time
mill
out.
kills.
You say that, but one of my favorite things in that was the drone shot of him picking up a rock and the guy begging for his life. It's just a boom. I've just never seen it like that shot from above like that, and
Yes.
it was a surprisingly impactful. I was surprised that because you're right that one was just like he threw an axe downtown and hit a dude,
Yeah.
which as
No,
a guy,
you're right. I glossed over that sequence. It is cool because it's done. It's an aerial shot, right? You're like
mm-hmm.
bird's eye view, pointing straight down at this killer. All you do is you see him throw like an axe off camera, and as the shot follows the killer, it's like panning from left to right, bird's eye looking down, following the killer. Suddenly, the killer walks up on this dead body with that axe in the back of his head. So like right there, it's another one of those like not shown kills, but that it's still like equally,
Mm-hmm.
it's just as badass. Picks the axe up. No, he doesn't even pick the axe up. He picks up a rock. Yeah. And then still bird's eye view following this killer. And he just drops this huge rock on the other guy's head and like explodes his head.
Yeah, it was
See,
just such a sick effect. Yeah, I love that one.
so again, here we're talking about like, maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not, but all of these kills are quick and specific and intense. And then the yoga kill is
And
yeah,
I find
maybe it's
it,
fully intentional because maybe even this like zombie killer guy is annoyed by this girl, so he kills her in a brutal way. Where everyone else he just wants to kill, so he gets
and
him out of
like,
the way quick. I don't
what
know.
I'll say is that there are three characters in particular that get brutalized. There is the yoga, there is the ranger who he has a very personal past with,
Yes.
and the guy who stole the locket, when he kills them, is just pounds and pounds and pounds over and over until the girl just like leaves off screen and we don't see him again. The last thing you see of Johnny like directly is him just stabbing a dude forever.
Right. And
And
then
those
it's
are,
cool they even layer that audio in later. I don't know if you heard that. Did you hear that?
what do you mean?
So there's the sound of his axe chopping the
Yeah.
guy's head, this like splatting fucking chunking sound. They quietly layer that audio into some of the scenes where the surviving girl is looking out into the woods.
Oh my god. No, I didn't get to hear that
Yeah.
because like I was
Because
oh
yeah,
my
you hear the
god.
woods and the wind and the kind of trees and leaves, but then you can kind of like mixed in with that is that chopping axe hitting flesh
Oh, and like it
sound.
could be one of those things of like, is she hearing that, or does she think she's hearing it, or is it
Of course,
something else
yeah,
that sound? Oh my god, that's
it was
awesome! I did
cool.
not know that.
Yeah, yeah, really cool subtle touches there to like give us some insight into the level of PTSD this girl's gonna suffer. Like,
But I do find it
not
interesting.
just what
Those are,
she's seen, it's what she's heard that's gonna like
oh
stay with her
yeah.
forever. You know.
But I do find it
Um,
interesting that the three characters that they have like extended kills for are all this like person I hate you, like fuck off type thing. And so
yeah.
I don't know that it's intentional or not. I just think it's an interesting observation.
No, it is when we're talking back on it. Although I don't know why the killer would have a personal vendetta against the yoga girl. Maybe that's
Like in
for
the
our benefit
same,
as the audience.
it kind of can feel like this, like kind of a representation of this new generation that's just very self-centered, self-absorbed, like kind of, and that's the kind of vibe I got from her, was like she was a stand-in for kind of more troublesome people, and that's why in particular this character could not stand it, because like how little the character seemed to care, Johnny seemed to care a lot about being kind and respectful to things, and she was not in particular very respectful about where she was or who she was with. So
Right, yeah.
that, and like it's that's
Yeah,
kind of
she's just
the,
representative of like modern
or
generations
like
and
a young
whatever.
person who just does not give a shit about other people
Yeah.
or where they are or what came before them, that kind of thing. And I am probably giving the movie too much credit. That Yoga Kill could have just been like, this would have been fucking sick to do, bro, and they just did it. Um,
I definitely thought he was gonna like pick her up and do like a Bane Batman suplex style, but of course in like
ooh,
monster fashion. I was hoping he was just gonna like pick her up and just bend her in half with his arms, like literally just grab
oh
her neck and
man,
like one of her legs and just snap her in half. Like that's what I wanted him to do.
that's gnarly. I did not
But
think of that. That would be pretty cool.
well, because she's doing yoga, you're like, okay, this guy's gonna twist her up or do something
Right,
that's
and
like
like
yoga esque.
it fits that it's
And
a freaking yoga thing. Yeah.
I was hoping it was going to match the swiftness and the intensity of the previous kills, and he's just going to like walk up, trip her, pick her up by the face and the crotch, and just bend her in half and like be done with it.
That's a good
Leave her
point. The
like, oh
speed, I think, now that you talk about just, you really just like the speed of it more than it is like, let's say that kill took 8 seconds. Punch through, hook, pull through, 8 seconds. Do you think it would have hit harder? Like, would you have
yeah.
liked that more, you think?
I think so. If it was literally just like, yeah, punch, reach up, hook through with the same arm, rip her head down through her own gut, yeah, like that would have done it for me. So it's interesting. It's, yeah, now that you're pointing that out, it's like, it's the amount of time that she was standing there, like being dead, but also being like doing
Willing?
physically
Yeah.
impossible things. It was like, I don't know.
Uh,
I'm a minimalist guy,
yeah.
I love things that are like to the point and intense. That's the kind of stuff I love.
That's a
That's
good
also
point.
why I love the show Mr. In Between so much. Like everything he does has so much intention behind it. It doesn't dilly dally. Like, oh god, that show is fucking brilliant. But that's neither here nor there. So then we get to Ranger Guy that he's got a personal vendetta against. Also, crazy brutal kill. The fact he trips the dude, picks him up by his spine and paralyzes him, breaks his spine with his hand. Or sorry,
God.
Johnny is the killer.
Hmm.
Breaks the Ranger's spine with his bare fucking hands. Paralyzes the guy. He can't move. All he can do is look, he can just look around with his eyes. So immediately, the way it's shot, you're like, oh my God, he's paralyzed now. He literally can't move his entire body, just his eyes. So then Johnny, the killer, drags the ranger into this like shed where there's a giant wood splitter and just, pulls his arm. First of all, of course, they demonstrate that it's a wood splitter by showing the thing split wood. And then, of course, as the audience, what's coming. He like picks up Johnny's arm, or not Johnny, sorry. Picks up the ranger's arm, puts it in the wood splitter. Now, here's another little nitpicky thing that you're probably going to laugh at me for, but these are the little things that I just get me in movies. I don't know if you remember, we had a log splitter.
Oh my God, Kyle. No,
Do you
I
remember?
don't remember this. I don't remember this.
At the
No.
Verona house, well, I would split logs with Ernie. Log splitters are so ridiculously fucking powerful. They're like, they're like industrial grade presses. They split logs like there's nothing in front of them. That's how powerful they are. So, in the movie, the log splitter, like struggling and shaking back and forth to like chop through this guy's arm was fucking nonsense to me. This is what I'm saying. Like, it might sound nitpicky and silly, but it's like,
do you want to
personally know how powerful these things are. And the fact that the thing was like struggling to like chop through this guy's arm.
I think the movie answers it in universe that this is a very, very, very old and abandoned like logging site. So that stuff is at least to 30 years old because it's implied that the company that was around set up this logging thing when Johnny was a kid and was killed. So
which, by the way, did Johnny die as a little boy and grew up into a monster underground? I don't understand.
And I think that's why it's another one of those, like, it's a force of nature. It's like he kept growing. But yeah, I guess it could be implied that he was that
I think he's
big.
Just slow, right? So he was still childish as
yeah,
like a
maybe I
man.
misinterpret, and like I haven't seen
that's how I thought of
release
it.
date. But like the way I think of it is that this shit is old and crappy. Now, that may not be a good enough reason, but that would
especially no, because they literally showed it splitting a log before splitting up this guy.
You know what the real reason is then? It is straight up not to be analogous to real life, and it was cooler when they got to do that. I think that's the real answer. Or like the prop they did struggle to cut through whatever their thing is because it's not a real log splitter or something.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that is true. It obviously wasn't a real log splitter. I will say though, like, I think there's absolutely merit in showing the power of a real log splitter, just going start to finish without skipping a beat, chopping this dude's arm off and then chopping his head off. Like, I think, I don't know. It's almost like how little this guy is struggling to kill anybody or do what he wants to do. It almost would have been like a little more representative of him, again, as a force of nature, this unstoppable thing of this wood splitter just going like, yep, and boom, there's your arm cut off, move your head up there, and boop, your head's gone. Like, I would have liked that more personally.
Normally, I think I would concede that point, except that this one, I think, is very different. In that normally he's doing this because he wants to torture this guy for what he like did to him, right? So this is not just like I'm efficient trying to get my medal back. This is personal. I'm making a side quest stop to fucking end you. Then I'll go back to my normal life.
This old piece of shit that doesn't work right apparently, and it's gonna be slow and chop your arm
and
off.
like I'm gonna prop you up so you can see what's going to happen to you.
Yeah,
and like So I will say that I feel normally him being methodical makes sense. I think it makes as much sense for him to not be, because I think he's both a force of nature and human, right? It's a force of nature in the shape of a human is the way I kind of like articulate it.
And like I said, it is probably nitpicky. And anyone else who doesn't know, even you, probably like not thinking about it or realizing it, like,
I didn't even realize
it might struggle to do a thing.
I didn't even really piece that together. Yeah, that's
right. So So this is more on me than anything. It's just that like it's my fault for
It's your
knowing
hang up.
how these
Sure.
things operate.
Yeah.
Um, so
Burden of
yeah, that part
knowledge.
was insane, and I don't know how. I mean, I'm sure it was CGI, and it's probably not hard to do. But when so Johnny pulls the Ranger's arm up onto the wood splitter, we see his arm come off first. Then Johnny moves the Ranger's head into the wood splitter at the neck, and the wood splitter goes forward and chops his head off.
I can tell you.
While the ranger is laying there waiting for this log splitter to cut his head off, you can see his eyes like frantically looking around, and it doesn't cut. So obviously there's some kind of CGI or like face implanting manipulation or whatever. But yeah, like you see his eyes frantically looking around, watching this log
Mm-hmm.
split approach his neck, and then his head gets cut off, and it's all like done in one shot. I thought that was a really cool touch, and like seeing how scared this dude was up until his last second, it was
Oh,
pretty
so
brutal.
good. So two things. They digitally so they put his eyes. They took a take of his eyes and placed it on a dummy.
I
So that's a
figured.
real that's the secret. It's just his eyes that are digitally altered. Everything else is just a dummy. Um
Yeah,
Budge,
that's
I was just gonna
that's
say something about what I remember in the
Whoa, wait,
theater.
what were you just doing? You were so clear there. Your audio?
I literally just went from sitting back to sitting forward. And
Oh, wow, dude, leaning back, you are so like tinny and echoey, and when you're forward,
like
it's like,
right now, do I sound tinny?
I mean, yes, but not nearly as much. It's
Interesting.
way
Okay, I'll
cleaner.
I'll stay sitting forward more for now. Um,
I mean, we're at, by the way, an hour 15, so I think we might just have to like cut this after this review, which I should have known better. We talk endlessly about
yeah,
everything for
a
fucking
hundred
ever.
percent.
Like, we're probably
I
only gonna be able to do one thing.
honestly, that's cool because I think it's sick that we can talk this long about one movie
I
because
do
I didn't
too.
know. I'm like, is this gonna be like even an hour long? And here we are, like over an hour and a half, and we're
Yeah.
almost at the in 60. We're almost at the last act.
This
Um,
happened when I did a podcast talking about Blade Runner
Blade Runner
2049 with Jake
2049.
Johnson and one of his friends whose name I can't remember, sadly.
I listened to it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, you linked it to me. I thought it was fucking cool. It's been years since I've
Oh.
listened to it, but
Yeah, I
the
mean, it was
first,
like 10 years ago.
yeah, no,
But
I
yeah, I
had,
remember when we ended the podcast, the other guy specifically said, like, dude, I'm so glad you were asking questions because, like, I ran out of shit to say, like, 20 minutes into the episode. I was like, yeah, that's my fucking endless talkability.
but
So sorry, you were saying.
yes, when I was in the theater with Brianna, I remember being so like uncomfortable because what I thought he was gonna do was limb by limb by
Mm-hmm.
limb. And I was like, because like that to me, they kind of set it up that way. But I was really glad that it was more of a like, first, I just want to demonstrate what the power of this is. Okay, that goes through his hand, and like what I like to think was that he goes and checks his watch, like, wow, this is taking way longer than I thought. I got places to be, so
I
I'm
was
just gonna
gonna
put your head.
say Johnny himself was probably gonna get bored of that. He's like, all right, you
Right.
know what, this is
And
taking
like
too long.
honestly, that could be what happened. He did it for the arm, and like having no reaction, maybe he was like, all right, let me just
I
end
mean,
this now. But
if you think about the actual duration of him like breaking his back, dragging him into the shed, turning on the thing, like this guy had to sit there and contemplate his own death happening for about 10 minutes.
I I always point to that
That
kill
would have been
way more than the
horrible.
yoga one because one, I've never seen anything like that, and in the true horror, it's like everyone knows what the end is gonna be, and it's surprisingly not graphic. Like there's obvious, I mean, they literally cut off a dude's arm and then his head, but like you think about the other kills in this
Oh
movie,
yeah.
it's like one of the least graphic.
Kind of is,
It's
yeah, because it's the positioning of the camera, right? Like
mhm.
it's
Oh,
we're
that was
watching the
something.
splitter go forward. The arm falls off like to the left where you can't see it, and then his head falls off the same way. You just kind of get
I
sprays of blood.
really loved the camera not like being like thirsty for the violence. It's almost like a clinical like you're just seeing what's happening. It's not like that could have been just a normal. The camera's angled in a way to like not highlight that this is a horror movie. Like it felt like a shot from a movie in a different genre. Or a lot of the shots are they're just not
Yes.
very I don't know, like just like really lusting over the violence. It's
So
very
that's a great point, and that is another thing
yeah, you're
that
right.
grounded the
You're
movie too
right.
much to like that juxtaposed the silliness that made me just not enjoy the movie as much as I hoped I would was, yeah, like the way it was. There was a lot of I don't know the terms of a lot of these shots, but yeah, it was like just a static shot. It was the camera was set up on a tripod and we're watching this dude get dismembered. Like it was it was clinical. It was like
Yeah, and it was at like in an angle that isn't trying to like have a good shot of what's happening.
It did cut close up. Oh, look at look at the skin split apart. It was like, nope, we're watching them split logs, but they're not
It's
logs,
like
they're body parts.
it was like security cam footage of the room instead. It's like,
which, if you think about it, like that's usually the most like unsettling, disturbing footage is like in the news when they like, we have security camera footage of this attack, and it's like just actually that is something David Fincher does that makes his movie so good. Is he specifically said that like he barely moves the camera. And the reason is because he wants this camera to be this just unapologetic, static observer, and you just have to watch these things, and like there's no opinion given by the camera, like you're saying in this movie. The camera isn't cutting close. It doesn't want to see the violence. You're just having to see it.
Yes, exactly. So cool. And I find that to make it feel like a lot of people like to point to gore or to horror movies and gore and it being like torture porn and like violence for violence sake. And I think this movie does a good job of making the argument that like it isn't like this stuff is like artistically done. In some ways the art is like, how do you like the fact that Yoga Kill was done practically is in itself like a work of art. Like how do you make a thing that like does that and like you're able to present it as like it looked real in a weird way. Like it's obviously wasn't real, but yeah, and I think that was something really cool because I remember feeling like the pit of my stomach. I'm like, this might be too much. Like I don't want to see a Saw movie right now. And so like the fact that it was just like demonstrate the log, demonstrate to the guy that you're dead, and then he gets killed and then we're gone. I was like, all right, that was sick.
Yeah, that's another almost counterpoint to what I'm saying too, is like maybe if it was no, because like I said, the drowning one was cool. The first kind of off-screen kill was cool. They could have done it in like a quicker, brutal way, but yeah, maybe if the kill was no, never mind. Scratch what I'm gonna say.
You got it. Scratched.
Let's just keep going because we're almost at the end of the movie.
Let's wrap it up and get out of here.
Let's wrap it up. So, slams a guy, throws a rock on a dude's head, cuts this dude apart with the the log splitter. Then the last two people he has to kill are the girl in the beginning, who's like the only human being among these fucking cartoons, and then the guy who initially stole the locket and summoned this monster. They're both like in the woods. It's nighttime. The guy goes like, look, I'm going to walk over there and distract him. And then you, at this point, they somehow just like know you have to return the locket, right? Because the ranger knows.
The ranger was able to kind of give them the details about.
Right. So the guy was like, I'm going to distract him. You go return the locket. So the guy who initially stole the locket runs behind the monster, which is hilarious that he gets like within arm's reach of this monster. But he gets behind the monster and he yells like, hey, you stupid bastard, look at me. And like before he finishes his sentence, the monster just turns around and chops his head in half with the axe. Like, it's just so completely unceremonious, but like catches this dude by surprise because this whole movie, this monster's just been kind of like slow and lumbering. And suddenly he gets this burst of speed, instantly turns around and just chops this dude's head in half. Like, I loved it. It was very satisfying.
And then keep going, describing because I love all this.
Of course, the girl sees this and is like, oh, well, yeah, plan foiled. What the fuck do I do now? She's like standing there, trembling, shaking. The guy whose head he just chopped in half, his body falls to the ground, and Johnny picks the axe, rips the axe out of the tree and just chops this guy's head repeatedly over and over and over. And now we're finally seeing like the purpose of Johnny coming back to life was to get this guy and kill him because he's the one that stole the locket. Everyone else, like maybe he had a little fun killing the yoga girl, right? Obviously he twisted her up and whatever, but those kills were mostly just like a means to an end. He was just getting the job done. This is the guy he fucking wanted to kill. So yes. The guy is dead, his body's on the ground, his head is chopped in half, and Johnny, like literally for maybe a minute or 30 seconds or so, cutting back and forth between Johnny just repeatedly axe chopping the body of this guy and cutting back to the girl, like realizing what's happening, realizing that this monster is actually kind of distracted. He's so mad and he's taking out all of his undead anger on this body that the girl, you know, scared that she might be next, now realizes like, wait, I have an opportunity to actually run away here. So she takes the locket out of her pocket, and like sets it down on the ground basically for Johnny to hopefully find, and she just turns around and starts sprinting away. And now this is the first time in the movie where we kind of get a perspective change, other than in the beginning when it turned to like the 360 shot at the campfire, which I don't even consider a perspective change because the killer was standing right there watching the whole time anyway. So now the camera actually stops following Johnny, and now we're following this girl sprinting away for her life, running through the woods. And as she's running away, you can still hear Johnny chopping. This is the axe chopping flesh sound that, you know, I was talking about earlier. You can still hear him chopping, and as she gets further away, you know, that sound kind of fades away. But she eventually trips on something. This is another nitpicky point I have. She trips and like, I don't know, it kind of like cuts to daytime. She's still running through the woods, but suddenly she like yells out in pain, and there's like a 2-inch diameter fucking like stick jammed through her leg. I guess she fell on a stick somehow that's the size of a fucking javelin.
Bro acts like he doesn't know about the stick fields up in
right.
the
So
forest.
yeah, she gets the stick through her leg, but then just like limps forward, makes it to the road, finds this lady that, you know, pulls over and picks her up, and then this is the ending sequence that is pretty polarizing, I guess, even though I think it's just like a really simple kind of underdone ending. And it's this lady driving this woman, the survivor, and telling this story about how her husband found these murdered animals, like a deer that was mutilated and destroyed but wasn't eaten. So it made it very peculiar that something in nature might have done this, but it was torn apart in a way that like only a bear could have done this, basically. And as her husband is like, he's a park ranger investigating this, he finds more bodies like raccoons and possums that are also wolves that are just like killed and shredded and ripped apart, but not eaten or consumed in any way. This lady's husband eventually makes it to a river. He's kind of looking across the river. Mind you, this woman is telling the story. We don't see any of this. It's just a monologue in a car. It's kind of switching perspectives back and forth between the lady driving, telling the story, and the survivor woman who's like borderline passing out from blood loss and trauma. So her husband makes it to a river. He's kind of looking out to see what's going on. The bear attacks him from behind, grabs his head, is shredding him. The husband survives, but the only reason is because he drowns in the river from the bear holding him down before the bear can physically like tear him apart. So the ranger drowns. He ends up like floating downstream and wakes up to his ranger friends like resuscitating him with CPR, right? So the only reason he survived was, because he drowned first, and then they CPR'd him back to life. Then this woman gets through this monologue, right? It takes about 10 minutes. I just kind of made it a lot faster, even though it still was a long time.
I was like, was that faster?
Yeah.
It's a long monologue.
Woman makes it through this monologue, and she goes like, you know what? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have told you that. Like, I don't know. And at this point, the survivor girl is like literally unconscious because of blood loss. So the lady stops and is like, hey, hon, wake up. You know, like I gotta wrap up your leg to stop this bleeding. And the girl's like, no, we gotta keep going. And this is a part where we were talking about earlier where she's kind of just like staring out into the woods, of course, like PTSD through the fucking roof, traumatized as hell, thinking the killer might be there. But this whole time they've been driving like 50 miles an hour while this woman has been monologuing for 15 minutes. So, you know, logically, like they're probably 15, 20 miles away from, you know, where this lumbering monster has been killing people. So we as an audience know, even the girl survivor probably knows, like, logically, he shouldn't be here. All he's been doing is walking around. He doesn't have magical teleporting powers. He doesn't have super speed. He's just, you know, he's like Jason. He just walks.
He's just a guy.
Yeah, he's just a guy. But, like, that doesn't stop you from being traumatized. So, yeah, then this is when they've pulled over. The woman is trying to tend the survivor lady's leg, and this woman, the survivor lady, I should call her, I guess, is staring out into the woods. And even as an audience, you're kind of paranoid too, like, holy fuck, is he going to be there? Like, you're scanning the woods, like, is he standing out there somewhere? Because there have been a lot of shots in the movie, we haven't talked about it, but that the killer is just standing, like, ominously in the woods. And there's a lot of shots where you can see him, and the people he's about to kill could see him if they were looking in the exact right spot, but like nobody ever sees him. So yeah, of course, you as an audience member are with this survivor lady, and you're wondering if he's still out there. And then it cuts back to where the survivor lady initially put the locket down. You see the locket is now gone. So the implication is the monster found the locket and is potentially like, laid himself back down to rest where he was initially resurrected.
And I think
And that's how it ends.
I really loved the ending in the like she sets the stuff down and then he just takes it and goes. Like that
Yes.
truly, it almost feels like a perfect full circle. Like that is like nature. It was disturbed and now it can go back to rest.
Yeah. Also, like, why didn't you guys just give this back to me in the first place, you fucking idiots? Why'd you make me kill all of you?
Also, who wears a tacky? If Brianna and I were on a camping trip and she found like, oh hey, I found a locket in the middle of the woods. Would you wear it? I'd be like, bitch.
Yeah, no.
You're stupid. Like, I don't know. Like, that's more of a joke because, like, the real answer is if she didn't wear it, it'd be kind of hard to, I don't know, piece that together. But I think the idea of her, like, even if what I would have done as my edgelord self is, like, I would cut to black when she sets down, like, they zoom in on the gas canister and the locket. They just show her set it down and like put her hands up and then like leave. And then I wish it just like cut to black right after that. Like take out the monologue. Does he stop killing the dude? Like it almost doesn't matter. It's just like in some ways like that would almost be like a metaphor of like finally recognizing nature, that you can't beat nature. You can just like kind of work within its power. And like she learns that like way too late, but she learned it. Like that's almost like a symbolic thing of, that seemed to me like kind of like this overarching message or theme was this respect the forces of nature, like this, just like these, how do I explain it?
Don't fuck with what you can't handle. Like, don't underestimate the power of nature. Of
It's
course,
just like this,
the more meta point was, it was like don't underestimate the power of nature.
or
The force
like
of
this,
nature is unstoppable.
like the idea that you can just like change that force, like that you were stronger than nature, I guess is like that. Because like I don't think it's a coincidence that it's a logging company near woods that is the inciting incident of this force of nature to come up to protect said nature. Like the last time man came near these parts, an atrocity was committed, And I just like to think that that is not a coincidence, that of all the, like, and I know that, like, there's only so many ideas you can come up with, but I'd like to think that that was an intentional, like, kind of theme, a moving point. But now that
talking about the ending, sorry, what?
No, go.
Okay, yeah, talking about the ending, yes, I completely agree. I even would have let it go so far as to, maybe stick to the gimmick the whole time, like never leave off of the killer. Like you said, maybe watch this killer start chopping the shit out of this guy's body. You cut back to this girl who realizes what's happening, drops the locket, and just like maybe a long shot holding on her because it's nighttime, right? So maybe it's just a long shot of her like running, sprinting through the woods, and eventually like, oh man, I can almost see the shot in my head. It's so cool. Okay. So it cuts back to this girl. The whole time we're hearing chop, chop, because this guy is chopping the body. As you're hearing this, you see the girl slowly pull the locket out of her pants, and she bends down and gently sets down the locket. All of this is still one take, all while hearing this chopping in the background. And the girl like backs up a few steps and turns around and starts sprinting away. Now you're hearing the rustling of leaves and twigs and trees snapping and as she's running through the woods. You can see her and she gets deeper into the woods and starts fading away. Eventually you can't see her at all, but you can still hear her running. You still hear the leaves and the wood kind of sounds. Again, all the while, Johnny is still chopping this dude in the background. Then eventually, her sounds completely fade. She's run far enough away that you can't even hear her running through the leaves anymore. And then you just hear him chopping, and it's a still shot of like the dark woods, and you see the locket in like the bottom corner of your screen on the ground on the gas canister. and it's just chopping and chopping and chopping, and then like end movie.
Oh man, that's whew,
Doesn't that
I just
sound fucking awesome?
that sounds terrible. Like that's harrowing. It's kind of
Yeah.
terrible, not bad terrible, but yeah, I would love that. And that so what I was gonna say is, as after talking about this movie, I definitely recognize more of its flaws than I did before.
Sorry.
Um, no. I'm saying that as like I like that it didn't change how much I liked it, to be clear, as much as like I think it's brought a more realistic approach to people who don't. I'm being like, oh, that's actually one thing I really like about you, Kyle, is that you
Let's
don't
hear
like a
it.
lot of stuff, but you can talk and explain more than it fucking sucked, dude. Like that stuff makes me
Yeah.
so mad. So at work we're having like a get to know you thing on Monday because we have a new leader. And one of the questions is, what is your biggest pet peeve? No, what is your hottest take? And mine is, you're not allowed to say you like or dislike something unless you can defend why. If you can't tell me why you think or feel about a topic, you don't actually feel that way. You're just
Right.
like,
Or you don't get to have that opinion unless you can articulate why you don't like it. You can't just say you don't like
yeah,
it.
because then you
Like
you
actually
don't
think about
have
it.
an opinion. You're just repeating something you've read because how can you like something but don't know why? Or if you do, if you or don't like something and you can't say why, then how do you know you don't like it? Like, are
Yeah,
you
I mean,
sure you're not
there's
confused?
well, there's definitely like an argument to be made about just a gut feeling, right? Like, yeah, you come out of something, you're like, I don't know, I just didn't like it. But people tend to not delve into that feeling. And
Yeah,
that's why we can
and
talk about stuff forever, is because we like I'm saying, I like nitpick every little thing in this movie, and I can really specify what bothers me about stuff, and that's just from being fucking overly critical my whole life and
yeah,
watching thousands of movies.
and I think realistically, I've probably pointed out stuff that made you like it a little bit more, or a scene a little bit more, or a
Yes,
character.
I was gonna say that to counter your point is that yeah, we both kind of enlightened each other to the other one's view. Like there were some things now I'm thinking about, like oh yeah, I guess maybe that was intentional, or maybe I will give that thing a pass, and
Yeah, but it
you
doesn't really
aim the
change your
opposite way.
like overall feeling, and like, but it
Exactly.
does make you appreciate the things you like more, or dislike the things you disliked less, and I think that's pretty cool. But I would say that this movie was easily, when I walked out of there, like a 4.5 out of 5 for me. As I did the cool down, I think it's more like it's probably like if I had to letterbox it, like a 4. In that like its highs to me are so high, but it doesn't do what I would give like a 5 out of 5 star movie to. It didn't move me as
Yeah.
much as like I thought this was just a really well made, cool, fun thing. And so like that's where I end on it. And I think that anyone who's interested in should watch it, is how I always say it. Like if you're into, like when I describe an ambient horror movie that is surprisingly violent at times and really slow the rest of it, if you're still on board, I'm like, I think most people who are on board for the premise will like the movie. It's just, I think a lot of people I think it helps knowing what to go in expecting, right? Like if you thought that was the yoga kill was what the rest of the movie would be like, that would suck. In the same way that you had like the inverse where like the yoga kill kind of set you kind of backwards. I think expecting all of them to be that way would also kind of make it a shit experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can't say anything else. I agree with that. Something I did do though after watching that movie was it made me want to go watch Tucker and Dale versus Evil
Oh
afterwards. Have you
yeah,
seen that?
dude, was it
Yeah,
Haley Cates is the one who
it
insisted it?
was.
That
Yes.
is the greatest contribution. Haley Cates, shout out. I don't know anything
Yep.
about you. I didn't know you that well, but that is
Nope.
certainly the most important thing you brought to my life in
That is
2024.
yeah. It's like yeah. The single most memorable thing was
Yeah,
it's a
that's
great
very
movie
funny.
rec. I probably never would have watched it if it weren't for the recommendation. So
Yeah, and
um
I'm it's changed my life forever. So, but yeah, I'm glad we got to talk about that. And video game thing we'll save for another time. That is no
yeah.
problem. I'm glad we both got. I do find it much more. I think it would go really fast if I was telling you about a thing you didn't know about versus us both discussing a movie we both have
Yes.
articulate thoughts about. So I think realistically, if we're both saying like, I want to recommend you something and here's why, or I want to talk to you about this and here's why, those probably will go a lot faster than almost 2 hour discussion about a movie we both had
Yeah, I
thoughts on.
mean, we couldn't have discussed this whatsoever, especially if we wanted to avoid spoilers in our recommendation. Like everything we
Yeah,
talked,
and that's
we dissected the whole movie, so I would have given you a 10-minute spiel on why it's cool and left it
yeah.
at that. So
All right. Well, I think I'm going to stop recording my audio now because I don't think.
yes,
All
I will
right. Goodbye,
too.
audio.
Bye.